Hi, welcome to the Whole Body Detox Show. I'm your host, David DeHaas, where each week we bring you information on how to heal the body naturally. We're located in Boise, Idaho, where we do a 10-day healing retreat and are best known for helping people get their health miracle. If you want to know more about that, go to healingtheincurables.com. That's healingtheincurables.com. Or you can reach out to us on the telephone, 208 378 9911. Enjoy today's show. To Dr. Martin Pall talk about the health effects of electromagnetic frequencies. The biggest contributor of these damaging frequencies is from cell towers. Boise and Meridian have failed to properly regulate the placement and power of these towers, so Idahoans for Safe Technology is going to court to turn off all the very damaging 5G small cell towers. You can help Idahoans for Safe Technology by buying a raffle ticket to win 1/4 side of grass-raised beef with your tax-deductible dollars. Go to idahoansforsafetechnology.org and purchase your tickets to help fund the legal fees needed to stop the damaging small cells. You have heard him. He's told you about how they cause hormone problems, creates glioblastoma cancer, fatigue, AFib, fertility issues, erectile dysfunction, ADHD, and many more. We know it also decreases your property value, and you have the right to not have someone spray a pollution on your property 24 hours a day. The only way it's going to change is if you step up and help us by helping support our legal fees at idahoansforsafetechnology.org. Thank you very much. 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 Thank you. All right, we'll start. Good morning, everyone. My name is David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center and your host of the Whole Body Detox Show. Really excited for today's show because I got a very special guest that I have brought on today, Dr. Martin Pall. He is a retired professor from the Washington State University. He's an expert in the electromagnetic fields. He's published a book, which I find very enticing, called Explaining Unexplained Illnesses, Disease Paradigm for Chronic Fatigue Syndrome, Multiple Chemical Sensitivities, Fibromyalgia, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, and Gulf War Syndrome. And you can get that wherever you buy books. That looks very, very interesting. I haven't got to read that yet. I wish I had before this interview, but it sounds like we got a lot to talk about with electromagnetic frequencies, small cells. So for those of you listening today, if you've got a cell phone, which most everybody does, if you have Wi-Fi in your home, or if you're near a cell tower, you want to listen to this because this is information that is affecting all of our lives. And Dr. Pall, please, welcome to the show. And I would argue that this is probably the biggest pandemic. Maybe you can prove me wrong, but first of all, before we get to that question, just explain a little bit about your history, your background. How did you get involved in electromagnetic frequencies?
Well, that's a interesting question. I was working on chemical effects in medicine, and both chemicals and EMFs, electromagnetic fields, have similar things. They both produce sensitivities, responses, and in chemicals it's called multiple chemical sensitivity, and in electromagnetic stuff it's called electromagnetic hypersensitivity. And so I published on how the chemicals act in producing these MCS, multiple chemical sensitivity effects. And so I thought maybe the EMFs would work the same way. Well, it turns out they don't. They work in a different way, but they produce similar effects in the cells of our bodies. And so, in biology and medicine, as I'm sure you know, and probably many of your listeners know, things are so incredibly complex that you can draw any number of stories about what's going on, and you really, in most cases, don't have the foggiest idea whether these are right or not, because of the complexity of biology, the complexity of medicine. But when you know how the EMFs work and the chemicals work, then it tells you a lot about what is a plausible mechanism and what isn't. And it gives you basically an anchor, and so it's very, very important to know that. And that's so basically what I've been doing, let me say, for the last over 20 years now, is I work on information in the literature that almost nobody has time to read and digest, because all of us scientists are so busy trying to keep the money flowing into the labs that it's impossible to spend the time to figure out what's already been done and what the importance of that is. So I think that a lot of information in the literature has been wasted in effect because of the way the system works or doesn't work. And so that's what I've been doing, and I find there's huge amounts of information in literature, and it tells us huge amounts of things, but you have to be able to follow the trail, and you have to have the scientific background that allows you to do that. So anyway, so that's basically what I've been doing.
Yeah, and you said you mentioned before the show started that you've written about 105 papers over the years.
Yeah.
Those, I assume it's not been all on electromagnetic frequencies, but other things as well.
I published my first EMF paper in 2013.
Oh, wow.
So this was after I, quote unquote, retired.
After
And
retired.
I published now, what, 13 or 14 of them. And you know, and so it's really been incredible how well this has been working out. Of course, the industry doesn't like what I'm doing, so that's not too surprising. Yeah.
Well, over the years here at Living Waters, we've had people come in who have had what I call the mysterious disease. As we're going through and detoxifying, we see them getting better. And in some cases, people kind of get to this plateau. It's like, well, what else is going on in your home or your environment? And come to find out over the years, they've been either next to an electrical substation, perhaps, or they might be like, we had a gal that went to work for a large corporation in downtown Boise, brand new building, but tons of Wi-Fi, tons of energy, and she had to work from home. In fact, she eventually just quit that company because she couldn't work there any longer. So we do know, our experience has been, is that I believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe it affects us all, but some of us know it more sooner than others. Am I right?
I think you're right, yes.
We have the supposed COVID pandemic. I don't see this as a pandemic as much as I see the dangers of the small cells and being too close to the macro towers and these 5G networks. And so we want to probably dive into that. And I know you talked about some of the 8 effects that this causes, and we see that. We see here. So you want to explain what your thought is on that, this being the next pandemic?
Yeah, well, let's talk about what the mechanism is, and
okay.
Okay, and this is going to be a little bit esoteric, but I think I'll be able to explain to you why this is so important. So the way in which EMFs work, and let me just say, electronically generated EMFs are very different from most natural EMFs because they're coherent. They're put out with a particular frequency, with a particular vector direction, with a particular polarity and phase. And for that reason, they produce vastly stronger electrical and magnetic forces than do most natural EMFs, which are incoherent. You know, there are all kinds of natural EMFs are mostly made up of different photons going in different directions. And
what would be an example of a natural EMF?
Sunlight.
Okay.
And in fact, there's a lot, so most EMFs most natural EMFs are incoherent. So they basically don't produce much in the way of forces. So the way in which you get biological effects is by forces on some charged groups, electrically charged groups in your body. So these are chemical groups, and they occur in a particular structure called the voltage sensor that detects electrical changes across the membrane that surrounds all of our cells, the plasma membrane. So, and what they do is they act to open up a calcium channel, and they allow huge amounts of calcium to flow into the cell, so the cells of our body. So extracellular calcium is usually about 10,000 times higher than intracellular calcium. So our cells use a lot of energy keeping calcium levels low, because when the calcium levels get too high in the cells of our bodies, they cause all kinds of problems. That's exactly what EMFs do. They cause these channels to open up. They allow calcium to flow into the cell. It's the excess calcium in the cell that produces most, if not all, of the biological effects. And so we know a lot about calcium. We know a lot about what it does in the cells of our bodies. And so, you know, you can see very easily how you get effects on our brains, on our reproductive cells, on our hormone systems, on almost every cell in the body actually is impacted, and on the immune system, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that happens when you let calcium in is you generate free radicals which attack the DNA of our cells, which cause oxidative stress, which is involved in almost every single chronic disease you can think of, and as I'm sure you know.
Yeah, let me pause for just a moment here and explain that, because not everyone knows what free radicals are that listen to my show. So I can kind of break it down into baby steps. So for those of you listening, you know, free radical damage, to give you a good example to paint a picture, is if you cut open an apple or a banana and you've seen that start to brown, that rotting process is oxidation. Or if you've seen iron rust, that's oxidation. So oxidation is not necessarily, we need some, but we don't need a lot of it. And we have too much in our society. So yeah, I just want to break that down. So also to back up for just a moment. So these calcium gated channels, if I can just see if I'm understanding this correctly. So when this opens up, this channel opens up and calcium floods into the cell, now you've got, I suppose, a lot of little workers down there trying to say, hey, way too much, right? Because it's having an impact. We want to stay in homeostasis, and balance. We want to keep the body in balance. And so each cell, 50 trillion plus cells in the body, we want to keep it in balance. So that becomes a real taxation on the body. And so that's what you're saying is creating this oxidative stress in the body. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, you're I mean, you're partly right, but you're
okay.
not quite there. Okay.
I just want to explain. I want to make it like so a first grader can understand it. So that's all I'm trying to do.
So there are two pathways of action that produce most of the pathophysiological effects, that is the damaging effects in the body. Okay. One of them is excessive calcium signaling. Okay. So calcium in the cells is very important for producing signaling, you know, for regulating things.
Okay.
And, yeah, way too much of it, that causes lots of problems. Okay. Now, the other thing which is true is that the calcium also increases nitric oxide and superoxide, which are two free radicals actually. And they react with each other to form something called peroxynitrite, which is a very potent oxidant, and which breaks down to form very highly reactive free radicals. And so that pathway in turn not only produces oxidative stress, but it also produces inflammation. And it also produces mitochondrial dysfunction. That is, the parts of our cells that generate energy are not working right. Okay, so you can well imagine this is going to cause lots of problems, and it does.
Well, the things that come to mind in my brain, from what little I know, I'm not an expert like you, of course, but you know, you've got cancer issues, and you've got, as you mentioned, this severe oxidative stress. So you've got, you know, mitochondria. I call that the furnace. That's where you're saying that's where the energy is burnt. So we've got so many people super fatigued.
Yeah.
So if you're around this energy,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got these symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
that's obviously going to be a source, a factor.
Yeah. And there are, let me just say, you know, different tissues respond differently in the body. The nervous system, including the brain, is the most sensitive organ in the entire body to the effects of the EMF. So you get
Wow.
very powerful effects on the nervous system, including the human brain. And those in turn produce all kinds of neurological changes. They also produce neuropsychiatric changes, and those include some of the things that I'm sure you're well aware of. I can't sleep. I'm tired all the time. I can't concentrate. My memory doesn't work. I'm depressed, etc. I mean, all these things that are becoming more and more and more common in our society, we know are caused by EMF exposure. And everybody, yeah, and the industry says, oh, nothing's happening, and it's all complete nonsense. You not only get that, but you also get a neurodegeneration. You get, a progressive neurodegeneration of the brain, including Alzheimer's disease, and essentially the whole brain, at least in animals, you can show the whole brain from EMF exposure just starts disintegrating. I mean, it really, you see gigantic amounts of damage. Now, humans are somewhat less sensitive. That's why we're still around, even though we got all this stuff. But there are effects on humans, and they are cumulative, and so I say, maybe I can't say. Can I use the term hell in this?
Use what term?
Term hell in this document here.
Yeah, you can use whatever words you want to. We're not censored.
Okay. I just say all the time our brain functions go into hell, and
Yeah.
I really believe that's true, and it's because the EMFs are causing all these problems, and they are. But the brain is not the only thing that's affected. You get effects. You get cardiac effects on the electrical control of the heart, and those can and do lead to sudden cardiac death. And this is, as you may know, we have an epidemic of young, apparently healthy athletes dying in the middle of an athletic competition. And what do? Well, we produce electrical devices, so some of them actually will survive. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, in the meantime, what do we have? We've got Wi-Fi all over the schools. We have a lot of schools with broadcasting antennae on the schools, and the whole thing is crazy. I mean, it really is. Yeah.
Well, yeah. How much more dangerous is it for these kids? You got these young kids.
Mm-hmm.
You got moms using baby monitors.
Yeah.
What do you think about the baby monitors? Are they safe?
No. No. And if you
have it 2 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet from the child, does that make it better or not?
It does, yeah, but
Much?
I don't know a lot about baby monitors per se, but I know that there are problems with them. I think that the more information that's carried in this wireless communication,
right,
the more pulsations you've got, which carry the information, and the more damaging the EMFs are to the cells of our bodies. So if you're going to have a baby monitor, and you're just, you're much better off with something that's just got audio on it, because
rather than a picture.
Yeah, the pictures are complicated.
Right.
Sound is much simpler. So if you wanna just have a sound thing, that would be much better. There are all kinds of things that are really very, very poorly designed that involve EMFs. Let me give you an example. Cordless phone. cordless phones, the base of the phone is radiated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't need to radiate all the time. The only time it needs to radiate is when you're either receiving or making a call. So these are extraordinarily poorly designed, and people have these, you know, these things right next to their bed, and they're getting irradiated all night. You know, so there are just many things that are just very poorly designed. You know, you look at well, another thing that's very poor are these smart meters. And the smart meters, you know, communicate. Actually, I was told in Idaho that you can get smart meters that are wired. Is that true?
They're putting, so they got them on this, on the water. They've got them on our power.
Yeah.
They're not 100% complete here. Suez Water, they're a water company.
Yeah.
So they still have some meter readers, but they're converting those.
Yeah.
I know Power, I think, has converted all the meters. I think they're all smart meters.
Yeah. That's too bad. You know, and the other thing about the smart meters is they pulse all the time. They don't need to pulse all the time.
You just need it once a month.
Yeah, once a month when you're reading your thing, or if you're going to be, you know, if you're gonna, you know, one of the ways in which they've been sold is, well, they, you know, you can change the rate that you're charged at different times of the day, because if you use electricity when there's not much usage, then it should be cheaper. And you can use smart meters to do that, but then you only need to turn them, you know, pulse them a couple of times a day. So it's crazy, and they pulse all the time. And why they do that? Well, they're stealing your information, and they're selling it. And so, you know,
yeah, data's dollars, and that's why telecoms want to put up these small cells, right?
Well, they want to put up the small cells basically so that they can, well, they can make more money. But you know, the idea of it is that you know, you can actually get more pulses and therefore communicate more information if you've got a higher frequency.
Right.
And that's the idea behind it. The problem is that the pulsation, as I said before, are things that make the biology much worse. So, and all of this stuff is completely ignored by the industry. It's completely ignored by the FCC. It's completely ignored by most of the regulatory agencies around the world. And yet there's all kinds of information on this stuff. I mean, this is not, you know, and let me just say, I don't take credit for any of the original data on this. There's gigantic amounts of information, literature that tells you all this stuff.
Well, that's what blows me away. And, you know, I've interviewed CC Ducette from Massachusetts. I've interviewed the gal, Dr. Davis from the Environmental Health Trust, Dr. Kent Chamberlain from New Hampshire, and you know, their commission, they've come up and took them a year and a half. He thought it would take 3 or 4 months. A year and a half later, they go like, oh my gosh, 12 of the 13 commission said, yeah, there's harm here. There's severe, dangerous harm. I think, and I'm sure, you know, the conclusion is that we can't see it. It's not like we're next to a rendering plant or a stockyard where they're slaughtering cows. We're not next to a dump. We can't see the pollution.
No,
right? It's invisible. We don't feel it per se. Some do, a small percentage do, but we don't feel it until it's too late, until we got brain cancer, or we don't have memory, or we can't make a baby. We don't. Why is that? You know, what's going on there? So, you know, it's just this cognitive dissonance that this can't really be happening. We've had cell phones for a while now, right?
Yeah, I don't have one actually.
You don't have one at all?
No, I don't have one. Last person on earth without a cell phone.
Right. No, I know a lot more people. You know, we're hardwiring our home. After everything I've learned, I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you know, you don't know what you don't know, and what's worse, what you know that is not so. And here we are with this. Let's talk about the different, before we get into specifics on 5G, the small cells, let's talk about just some of the things you've learned that the damage it causes to people's bodies.
Okay.
We have a lot of people can't have kids. Is that caused by these things?
Yeah, it is. And we are seeing, I mean, okay, so male fertility is much easier to study than female fertility.
Okay.
You can get at the sperm and you can look at them and you can do experiments on them. There are all kinds of experiments that have been done on human semen, where you take a semen sample and you divide it in half, and half of it you expose to EMFs. It could be cell phone radiation or Wi-Fi or whatever, and the other half you don't. And you see huge differences. You see the motility goes way down on these. You see increases in the DNA damage in the sperm when you expose to these radiation. You see that the sperm are structurally aberrant. It is not uncommon now in populations to have something like 3% or 4% of the sperm morphologically normal. So something like 97% of them are abnormal.
Oh my word. So if you're a male out there, you've got a cell phone in your pocket.
Yeah.
And you want to create a baby. You're telling me that 97% of that DNA is going to be messed up?
No, I'm not talking about the DNA now. I'm talking about the structure of the sperm, the physical.
Okay.
The DNA may be messed up too, but well, so let me just say some of the things we know, and let me say almost everything I say the industry will say isn't right. Okay, I guarantee it. But there have been studies done that have shown that if you carry your cell phone in your front pocket, I'm talking about males now, you have more fertility effects than if you carry it up in your breast pocket or in your rear pocket. So the closer it is to the testis, the bigger the effects. So what that means is that, and your cell phones are irradiating all the time at high levels unless you put them on airplane mode. So they are irradiating all the time, and that irradiation has effects on the body, and you can see that when you look at human sperm. There's no question about what's happening there. We are seeing drops in male fertility all around the technologically advanced world, and also to a substantial extent, even in third world countries. It's very common. And we know that EMFs do this, and we know the EMFs are all over the place because the industry claims that all it can do is heat things, and as long as there's not much heating, then we don't have to worry about it. This is complete and utter nonsense. I mean, this is just a gigantic.
Which is why the DC Court of Appeals said to the FCC, you've been arbitrary, capricious, and illegal, and said, come back with your studies and turn off any towers putting out more than 6,000 megahertz, which hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
We're going to change that, though.
Well, I hope so.
This show that this will air on, Dr. Paul, has got an advertiser that advertises for a lot. So I'm as much as he's advertising, there's a big audience because it's become known as the erectile dysfunction.
Oh yeah.
Advertisement all day long, which means there's a huge amount of people. I see it on our intake forms here at the office. We see that, ED, and these aren't old people. These are, 40, 45, 50.
Okay. Well, so let's talk a little bit. I mean, okay, I don't, I'm trying to think here. Do I know anything about erectile dysfunction? Yeah, but I'm not sure. Let me just say one of the things that's influenced by the EMFs is you get lowered amounts of each of the three sex hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, they all drop. Now, what that does to us is no doubt complicated, but it can't be good for reproduction.
Right.
And it can't be good for libido. You know, so that may have to do with your and let me just say, I talked to you about the fact that there are effects on human sperm that occur that have been shown experimentally over and over and over again. There are also effects on the structure of the testes and on the structure of the ovary. So you get other effects. Now, those can be studied experimentally in animals. You can't really study them experimentally in humans, but we do know that there is a drop in sperm counts all over the world, and that's probably caused by the testicular aberration in structure. Of course, when you get into these things, you have all kinds of complexities going on here, and it's but I mean, the literature on this stuff is large. It is, and a lot of it is is experimental, but a lot of it is not. The biggest set of experimental studies in humans, so I'm not talking about human sperm, but in real, running around humans, is that we know that these EMFs produce changes in the electrical activity of the brain as measured by EEGs. So EEGs measure the electrical activity in your brain, and what you find is that the EEGs change when we're exposed to EMFs, and among the EMFs that do that are millimeter waves. So this is the stuff that 5G uses, and these were studied with non-pulse millimeter waves, so these weren't pulsing at all. 5G pulses at extraordinary rates. That's how it communicates huge amounts of information, which the industry proudly talks about. The problem is that pulsation makes the biological effects vastly greater. So it's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah, so a Wi-Fi router, as I understand it, it's capped. It's capped for a reason at 0.1 watt of power. So your neighbor has a Wi-Fi, and the reason why they do that is obviously because they know there's something going on there, right? They cap that power on Wi-Fi devices in your home, but yet there's no cap on power in most of these ordinances on the macro towers, 4G, 3G, 2G, and nothing on 5G, because governments don't understand, because they've been told otherwise, that there's nothing to see here. As you mentioned, they're still using the old, hey, we can't heat up a mannequin to a certain temperature, so it must be safe, which is pretty insane considering, as you mentioned, the amount of data that is out there.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And these towers, how many towers are they going to put up to make 5G work?
Well, they've been talking about millions of them. I don't know. It's just
they want to put them every 200 feet in our town. Verizon wants it every 200 feet, and our city is ready to give it to them.
That's insane.
It is insane. That means every other house is going to have a tower in their front yard or back.
I mean, and this will destroy us. I mean, it's just crazy.
We have on our board, Dr. Paul, we have on our board a guy named Hank. He lives out in Eagle, and they turned a tower on last year. And he went into AFib. He's a healthy guy. He's 50 years old, 6'3", 240 pounds. I mean, healthy guy.
Yeah.
No comorbidities of any kind. I mean, he's a very healthy guy. EMF sensitive. He discovered that in California. Comes here, they turn that tower on. Within 3 days, he's an AFib. They had to use the paddles to get him going properly again. At his heart. This happened 6 times until he basically built a Faraday cage around his home. It also killed every one of his beehives. All his bees died.
You can't treat the body and heal it a piece at a time. You have to treat the whole body naturally. That's why Living Waters Wellness Center 10-day healing retreat is so successful in helping what I call the incurables back to wellness. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
For over a year, I've been dealing with gas pains, stomach pains, and it's been waking me up in the middle of the night, so I never get a full night's rest. And last night, after my first colonics, I slept through the entire night without any stomach pain or any kind of issues.
I suffered from migraine headaches for 12 years, once a month, and since I did the 10-day retreat at Living Waters Wellness Center 8 years ago, I have not even had a migraine. I've not even had a headache.
I had back pain on my left side for about 20, 25 years. After the 10-day healing retreat, the pain is completely gone.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to healingtheincurables.com or call the office at 208-378-9911. That's 208-378-9911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience and may not be right for you. Seek the opinion of a qualified healthcare professional before determining if cleansing is right for you. You have been listening to Dr. Martin Pall talk about the health effects of electromagnetic frequencies. The biggest contributor of these damaging frequencies is from cell towers. Boise and Meridian have failed to properly regulate the placement and power of these towers, so Idahoans for Safe Technology is going to court to turn off all the very damaging 5G small cell towers. You can help Idahoans for Safe Technology by buying a raffle ticket to win 1/4 side of grass-raised beef with your tax-deductible dollars. Go to idahoansforsafetechnology.org and purchase your tickets to help fund the legal fees needed to stop the damaging small cells. You have heard him. He's told you about how they cause hormone problems, creates glioblastoma cancer, fatigue, AFib, fertility issues, erectile dysfunction, ADHD, and many more. We know it also decreases your property value, and you have the right to not have someone spray a pollution on your property 24 hours a day. The only way it's going to change is if you step up and help us by helping support our legal fees at idahoansforsafetechnology.org. Thank you very much. 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 Thank you.
Yeah. There are powerful effects on of EMFs on insects. In fact, on all wildlife. There's a very interesting study that was done in Australia in an area that was highly protected. So around a mountain called Mount Nardi, Nardi, and what the industry persuaded them that, well, if they put 3G and 4G cell phone towers in there, it wouldn't do anything. And even though this was a highly protected thing, and you couldn't put any chemicals in there, but the industry said, oh, well, you should let us put these EMFs in there because it won't do anything. What happened was that you had huge impact on mammals and birds and amphibia and insects. And then when they put in 4G, they had massive extinction, local extinction. They're just all kinds of species that just disappeared from this highly protected area. This is what.
Oh my word.
Yeah, and I don't know. And insects have been impacted, and those of us who knew what the situation was, 25, 30 years ago. I remember when I lived in Pullman, driving over to Seattle in the summertime, and your windshield would be covered with insect debris because there were lots and lots of insects out there in the eastern Washington desert. And now you do it, there's hardly anything.
You're right. I didn't think about that, but you're right.
And so it's really stunning what's happened. And and again, everybody ignores this thing. And of course, it affects bees and other useful insects as well. And so, so the beekeepers have all kinds of problems, and we as a species have all kinds of problems because our food crops are on the verge of collapse, and which require fertilization from bees. So, there's all kinds of stuff that's going on, and yet, let me just mention one other thing, about this. Millimeter waves, which are used for 5G. There were 2 US patents approved for using millimeter waves, and these are not the highly pulsed millimeter waves of 5G. These were just the non-pulsed ones that just have a constant intensity as insecticides. They are so active in killing insects that you could just use these millimeter waves and kill off all kinds of insects. And we just ignore all of this stuff. And then there's the impact on plants, which is also very similar. The impact, plants are about as sensitive as we are to EMF. And it also works through calcium channels in plants.
Wow.
So,
do you think that we've had some pretty intense fire seasons? Do you see correlation between the amount of radiation and the intensity of fires? In other words, these the trees getting, does it make them more flammable?
Yeah, it does. I believe that the impact of EMFs on plants has roles in making these fires much more dangerous, and producing the very, very hot burning that we're seeing with these fires, and the huge movement of the fires just at incredible rates. And these things were first seen in the U.S. in 2017. With the California fires in 2017. They were seen in some other countries, a year or 2 earlier. But this is something that's new, and it correlates with all the EMFs that we have in the environment. But of course, correlation doesn't necessarily tell you that one thing is causing the other. However, there are powerful effects of EMFs on plants. And one of the things they do, and this is not the only important thing, I think, with regard to the fires, but it is important, is that it makes plants produce very large amounts of highly volatile and highly flammable terpenes. So it's a little bit like you were taking these plants and you were spraying them with light spray gasoline. And what happens? Well, they become more flammable. As they say, this is not the only thing I think that's going on here, but this is one of the things that's going on. So, and let me just say, we've talked about a number of different sources of EMFs. There's one other source that we really should talk about that we haven't, and that's what's called dirty electricity. And I think you're familiar with it.
I'm very familiar.
There are many sources of dirty electricity, but the basic problem that they create is the following. So our electrical power is supposed to be a 60 hertz, 60 cycle thing, right? It's supposed to be a nice smooth sine wave that goes up and down 60 times a second, okay? And if you look at these, and you can do that with a device called an oscilloscope, and you look at what our power looks like now, it doesn't look anything like that. It's got this 60 cycle, but instead of going nice and smooth, it goes, you have all of this, basically, they're called harmonics, but they don't sound good. Basically, all kinds of higher frequencies on our electrical power. And what happens as a consequence of that is that every single wire irradiates. It acts like an antenna, and it exposes us to radiation. And so the more dirty electricity there is, the worse it is. The closer we are to particularly high-powered power lines, the worse it is. And I think, you know, we know. Does anybody have an AM radio in their car anymore? Is this, am I the last one that has an AM radio in the car?
I still have one.
I remember driving across Eastern Washington, and when you get near a high-powered, high voltage power line, what do? You hear a lot of static, right?
Right.
And you hear static no matter what station you're listening to, or whether you have it tuned somewhere in between the stations. What's that telling you? It's telling you those power lines are irradiating every single frequency in that range. And that just includes the AM band, but it actually goes out to all kinds of other frequencies. So you have all kinds of dirty electricity in our power lines. And the more you have, the worse it gets, the more the biological effects are. And that's another source of major problems that is completely ignored by the regulatory agencies. And so we're in very deep trouble. We really are. It's good.
Well, you know, the rules in the FCC actually state you should use the minimal amount of power necessary. But no one's clamping down on that. It's just being completely ignored. It's in the rules.
Well, the FCC is corrupted by the industry. I mean, they don't do anything for us. They just do stuff for the industry. You know, I mean, that's the sad fact of the situation.
We have captured agencies for sure. That is very sure. So
yeah, there was a document that was published by the Harvard Safra Institute for Ethics. And I think the title of it is "The FCC is a Captured Agency." and so there was all the documentation on the corruption of the FCC by the telecom industry.
What is your I don't know if we talk about hormone issues in women, because that's a big one as well anymore.
Every single hormone system in the body is impacted by EMFs, and that includes the 3 sex hormones. So yeah, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone levels are all low because of EMF exposure. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Right. Well, that's pretty simple and straight to the point. I love it.
Okay.
So, you know, in all my interviews that I've done and the bit of reading that I have done and research and so forth, what, you know, we got, of course, glioblastoma cancer cells, and, you know, if allowed to perpetuate across the country as what's planned.
Yeah.
I don't see how we can survive it. I mean, how are we going to be able to reproduce? If we're getting cancer, if we're getting brain cancer, we can't remember who we are. We can't produce. We've got, you know, reproductive issues already, and we haven't even fully unleashed 5G. And that puts out, as you mentioned, we've had a physicist to testify at the local council meeting that these are weapons. These can be used as weapons.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that? Do you see what I see? I just see this as a huge pandemic. I
think we're literally doomed. Although, let me just say something. I made some prediction on this, how fast we were going to disintegrate. They weren't right. So I just want and I want to tell you why they weren't right. Okay. The EMFs act on this structure called the voltage sensor that controls these channels, and they open up the channels, they activate them. But it's also true that other EMFs can come in and actually interfere with that activation. So you have both kinds of things going on, and so being able to predict what's going to happen becomes much more difficult. And that's something I didn't appreciate when I was making my prediction. So I just want to admit that you know, occasionally I've said something that isn't quite right. Okay. So but yeah, no, I don't see how we can survive on this thing. I think that the number one thing that I'm concerned about is the disintegration of our brain function. The number two is a reproductive function, but there's a third, which is also, I think, very important, but we really don't know how bad it is now. And that is how much DNA damage is being done to our reproductive organs. How much, because it's the DNA which is responsible for producing future generations. So, assuming we can reproduce at all, but you know, I don't know how much damage is being done, and I've looked for information about that, and I really haven't found what I need in order to make any conclusions about it. So that's been frustrating to me, but I think it's quite possible that we're already very far down the road towards extinction. It just hasn't happened and sort of knocked this in the jar or whatever yet, so that nobody can ignore it. The problem I see is as our brain function goes to hell, that we may simply be unable to deal with it.
Yeah.
In which case we're doomed, even if the dooming hasn't been obvious yet.
Well, if we lose our brain cells and we don't know what's going on, I guess it'll be bliss, huh?
Well, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think what will happen is we'll just go into utter chaos.
Yeah, that's what I think too. You see chaos already today. I see it around me, and you see such disjointed thinking. We see it every day. I mean, a lot of this stuff makes no sense whatsoever. So yeah, I see it as a problem.
Okay. Yeah.
You got anything that you want to add to this that we may have missed?
Anything that you want to add to it?
Yeah.
In
terms of your research, have we covered all the?
Well, you can't cover everything. That's not the way it works. I guess I think that let me just mention one other thing. Okay. And that is there are a couple of books that were written in, I don't know when it was, 10, 12 years ago. No, something like that. No, maybe not quite. One of them is called Doubt is Their Product. And the second one is called Merchants of Doubt. And let me say, I don't have any connection with these people, but I think these are both good books. They tell you how various industries or groups of companies anyway have basically corrupted the science by getting scientists to say things that they want them to say. And so this has happened in the US and in other countries for the last 25, 30 years, maybe earlier than that. So it shouldn't be surprising the telecom industry is doing this. What's perhaps surprising is that they've been so effective in doing it. More effective, I think, than any other group of corrupting companies. I mean, they've got essentially every single regulatory agency in the world corrupted. I mean, this is absolutely stunning. And
it is, as I've listened to testimony from Verizon's attorneys, telecom's attorneys, and to hear them speak, it's amazing to me how you can have such a large company have this many people, given the evidence that's there, that thousands and thousands of studies that are out there. Of course, a lot of them are covered up. You can't necessarily Google them and find them.
No, you can find them. You can
Can you find them?
Yeah.
But I know that EH Trust did a great job of, Health Trust has put a great job of putting stuff on their site. And I know the Oregon site as well. But anyway, it's, this cognitive dissonance that of some pretty sharp people that know there's no harm here. It's mind boggling to me.
Well, if you got a multi-trillion-dollar set of industries, they can buy whatever they want, and so far that's pretty much true.
And you don't want to, and I guess if you're in that position, you got your mortgage payments and you're raising kids and you're in that position and you do find out, it's probably tough to, well, gee, I'm gonna lose my job if I blow the whistle.
Well, it's actually in some ways more interesting than that. What happened in the US was that between 1986 and 1999, essentially all the government funding for research in this area dried up. It just disappeared. And so what that meant was that if you're a scientist and you're trying to get money to do stuff, the only place you can get it is from the industry. And they've got, of course, this humongous conflict of interest. So, and there have been a number of people who were producing good science back then. I'm not going to name names, but I know of them who basically sold themselves to the industry. And, so it's tragic, but that's.
Why did it dry up though? What stopped the funding? Industry?
I think it must have been. What else could it have been?
Right.
Although it's not, that part of it, of course, wasn't done out in public, right? So we don't know what was going on behind the scenes. Well, that's not quite true. We know some of the things that went on behind the scenes, but basically, and let me just say, in the UK, something similar happened. Although when I talk to people in the UK, they say, "Well, everything's done behind closed doors in the UK, so we don't know what happened." In the US, we do know some of the things that happened, so it's really so basically. The good research is being done, the good experimental research being done in other countries, and including sometimes places where you wouldn't think they'd be doing good research, but they are. So I'm very grateful to the scientists in different parts of the world who are doing good experimental research. Their work is very important, and anyway. Okay.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us your views about electromagnetic frequencies and small cells. And for those of you who are listening to the show, we are looking forward to bringing this lawsuit, and we are actually doing a fundraiser. You can win a grass-fed steer. We're going to be butchered. You can win a quarter of a steer. Buy a raffle ticket on the site for Idahoans for safetechnology.org. Buy early and often, as I say. But yeah, no, this is really serious business, folks. And I would love to hear, for those of you who are listening, if you've had, like I had a gal the other day that called me. I get these calls now more and more frequently. She's not sleeping at night. She has this ringing in her ear. Her kids have all of a sudden have stomach problems. One has ADHD, never had it before. She's tested this. She's left town.
Mm-hmm.
No problem sleeping. The kids feel great. They come back to their home, they have a problem. One of the local high schools here has just put a tower on the roof, I understand, which is absolutely blows my mind. But again, people don't know what they don't know, and I understand that, but we've got to make this known. So if those of you who are listening, please do share this with your friends and fellow citizens, and especially your lawmakers in your local jurisdictions, because that's the only way we're going to get this changed and stopped. There's absolutely no reason to have these small cells at all. And even the large towers can be effectively, put away from people, at least 2,500 feet, put them 200 feet in the air, cap the power, properly regulate these things. We do have cell phones are a fact of life, but in your homes, you can take away the Wi-Fi, you can hardwire like many of my friends have. And if you're suffering from hormone issues, erectile dysfunction, brain fog, I mean, brain's big, and we're seeing more people with glioblastoma cancer cells, and it's just disheartening to see this, especially the glioblastoma cancer. Well, any of it, it's all dangerous. I see so many of my friends wearing the little devices in their ears, the little Bluetooth headsets, and they're wearing the watches on your wrist. If you're wearing those watches, I tell them when I see, please just get rid of that. There's really no reason to have a wrist on your watch. Well, I want to track my steps. Okay. Not good. Not good at all. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. This has been very enlightening, and I'm sure that our guests appreciate you as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Pall, and best wishes to you and blessings.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Turn this off.
You have been listening to Dr. Martin Pall talk about the health effects of electromagnetic frequencies. The biggest contributor of these damaging frequencies is from cell towers. Boise and Meridian have failed to properly regulate the placement and power of these towers, so Idahoans for Safe Technology is going to court to turn off all the very damaging 5G small cell towers. You can help Idahoans for Safe Technology by buying a raffle ticket to win 1/4 side of grass-raised beef with your tax-deductible dollars. Go to idahoansforsafetechnology.org and purchase your tickets to help fund the legal fees needed to stop the damaging small cells. You have heard him. He's told you about how they cause hormone problems, creates glioblastoma cancer, fatigue, AFib, fertility issues, erectile dysfunction, ADHD, and many more. We know it also decreases your property value, and you have the right to not have someone spray a pollution on your property 24 hours a day. The only way it's going to change is if you step up and help us by helping support our legal fees at idahoansforsafetechnology.org. Thank you very much. 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 Thank you. You can't treat the body and heal it a piece at a time. You have to treat the whole body naturally. That's why Living Waters Wellness Center 10-day healing retreat is so successful in helping what I call the incurables back to wellness. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
For over a year, I've been dealing with gas pains, stomach pains, and it's been waking me up in the middle of the night, so I never get a full night's rest. And last night, after my first colonics, I slept through the entire night without any stomach pain or any kind of issues.
I suffered from migraine headaches for 12 years, once a month, and since I did the 10-day retreat at Living Waters Wellness Center 8 years ago, I have not even had a migraine. I've not even had a headache.
I had back pain on my left side for about 25 years. After the 10-day healing retreat, the pain is completely gone.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to healingtheincurables.com or call the office at 208-378-9911. That's 208-378-9911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience and may not be right for you. Seek the opinion of a qualified healthcare professional before determining if cleansing is right for you.